Started writing this script, decided to rewrite the script, then was forced to rewrite the script again. One of the things that's been affected this year is the Summer Olympics, which were originally scheduled to take place in 2020 and have now been rescheduled to 2021. So why am I talking about the Olympics today? This video is part of a pre-planned Olympics-themed collaborative playlist with other members of We Create EDU, a group of educational YouTubers. There's a link up here in the cards, down there in the video description, and in the end screen for you to check out the entire playlist of sadly premature Olympics-themed videos. The next roster of summer games is slated to include some sports never showcased in the Olympics before, so today I'd like to talk about the sport I find most interesting, as well as why its incorporation into the Olympics is problematic. Today, I'd like to focus on how sport climbing has been added to the Olympics schedule. Ideally, I would have liked to have demonstrated these rock climbing techniques for you, but since climbing usually happens in a gym with people touching things other people have touched, yeah, we're just going to do the talky bits today, and hopefully at some point in the near future when there's no global pandemic raging, I'll be able to actually do a rock climbing demo. Okay, so the modern incarnation of the Olympics has been happening for a really long time, like more than 100 years, but the games don't stay the same. The Olympic Committee has to vote on which games to keep, which to discard, and which to add for each Olympic schedule. Sport climbing is new to the Summer Olympics schedule this time around, which is really exciting. I've been rock climbing for more than 10 years at this point, and I truly think it's one of the most perfect sports. It requires you to exercise your strength, your flexibility, your endurance, your cardiovascular system, and your mind. So it's great to be showcasing rock climbing on the international stage. I hope including sport climbing in the 2021 Summer Olympics will inspire more people to get out and try it on their own. But the sport climbing events at this Olympics have already been criticized quite a bit by the rock climbing community, and I think it's important we take a look at why. There's a men's category and a women's category, which is great. We're basically over sports that are only for dudes. But the format for sport climbing at the Olympics may not be ideal. Basically, all competitors will do 3 different kinds of climbing, and then the man and the woman with the highest overall scores will get the 2 gold medals. So that's the issue. 3 dramatically different types of climbing, only 2 gold medals. This is problematic for many people in the climbing community because the 3 different types of rock climbing being featured in the sport climbing events require different techniques, and most climbers only specialize in 1 or 2. What are these 3 different kinds of rock climbing? I'm so glad you asked. This is the part where, ideally, I would be at a wall and able to demo for you. But alas, today we will have to content ourselves with my verbal descriptions and strange interpretive dancing. Bouldering is a kind of rock climbing done relatively close to the ground, like no more than 10 feet high, so it doesn't use a rope. The safety measures instead are thick pads called crash pads that are laid out under the climbing area. Many boulderers also use a buddy system where a trained partner spots them and helps guide them when they fall onto the crash pads. When bouldering, you're working through something called a problem, which is basically a set of hand and foot holds meant to lead you from one point to another. This could be from the ground to the top of the wall, from one point horizontally across to another, or even around in a circle. Bouldering problems almost always include some sort of specialized hold, like tiny crimps that make you work with your finger strength, as well as requiring specialized moves like heel hooks, mantles, and dynos. These problems aren't meant to be done quickly. Good boulderers move slowly and methodically. The next climbing technique being added to sport climbing in the Olympics is lead climbing. Lead climbers go much higher than boulderers, so they use a rope. However, it also requires the climber to attach the rope to safety anchors as they climb higher, so there's still some risk of falling. And it requires the climber to find positions where they're stable enough to take one hand off the wall to move the rope into the next safety anchor. Lead climbing uses a lot of the same basic techniques as bouldering, although a lead climber may encounter more shelves, chimneys, and other features of the rock wall that they can use for climbing or must navigate around. Lead climbing, like bouldering, is not a race. It's about making steady, controlled movements, unless you're doing a dyno. And the height of the wall and the routes involved means that lead climbing is definitely a test of endurance. Conversely, the third kind of rock climbing climbing being incorporated into the next Summer Olympics is speed climbing, which works exactly like it sounds. A speed climbing route is a standardized set of holds placed in a standard pattern. This means that you can practice speed climbing in a way you can't practice the other techniques. The goal is basically to throw yourself up this set of holds as fast as you can. Speed climbing is about hand and arm strength, sure, but it's also about memorizing the pattern of the holds with your muscles so that you can make the movements without thinking. So can you see why people in the rock climbing community might be upset that these three techniques are being lumped together as one sport? It's really problematic to ask athletes to be good at all three of these kinds of rock climbing. For instance, my friends and I spend a lot of time on long lead climbing routes, so I have a good eye for puzzles and a fair bit of endurance, but I move really slowly to avoid slipping on tricky moves. Some of my friends have prioritized bouldering more than I have, so my fingers get tired pretty quickly and I've only done one successful heel hook. If you asked me to do a speed climbing route, I'd probably make it up the wall, but it wouldn't be fast enough to be interesting. On the other hand, a practiced speed climber might look really impressive as they zip up the wall, but they might lack the endurance needed to complete a lead climbing route or the techniques required to send a bouldering problem. Luckily, we won't have to be grumpy about this for very long. Because of the bureaucracy involved with adding new sports to the Olympics, all three types of rock climbing had to be lumped together for the first time. But the Olympic Committee has already stated that for the next round of Summer Olympics, hopefully to be held in 2024, speed climbing will be separated out from lead climbing and bouldering and will have its own competition and its own medals. So what do you think about this controversy surrounding rock climbing at the Olympics? Have you ever tried rock climbing? And if so, what did you think of it? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And don't forget, if you'd like to see more Olympics-themed content, check out the playlist with the other videos from the We Create EDU creators. They're good people and they make great stuff. If you liked this video, don't forget to like it. If you didn't like this video, please share it with someone who would. And if you'd like to support the Roving Naturalist, remember to hit the subscribe button and the bell notification icon. Then go check out my Patreon page. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. My new project, Nature Check, has a growing schedule of people playing games and talking about science, so go check it out on Twitch if you're interested. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.